new yoke is in town. All right. Cut towards your buddy, not your body. So much for that rule. All right. Yep, Sencore. This should be the Sencore. Yep, DY62 for a ZENITH 951768. Although others too. So let's look at the data sheet. And that's the yoke. It's really helpful that this eBay seller had a picture of the data sheet, because this is really tells you everything you want to know. And right down there, a 95-1825 is the yoke. And there is the diagram schematically of what it is. So what I really want to do is just take a look at the yoke with the ring tester and see if I guessed right or not on that old yoke. Oh my god, I shouldn't have been quite so callous. What just came out here? These aren't popcorn kernels. This is part of, look at this, it got blasted. Okay, well, we're gonna have to do a little, look at this. Gonna have to do a little yoke repair here. Well, I've got the chassis turned around on the bench here. And I wanted to get a better look at this deflection yoke assembly. I found out that these tabs here are the positioning rings, and this particular chassis, unlike the color sets of the same era with ZENITH, this chassis does not have a vertical position control or a horizontal position control. It's done right here at the yoke. And apparently this brass sleeve is supposed to be a width control device. So this by sliding this in and out of the yoke assembly, I believe it forms some sort of capacitor and varies the width of the horizontal deflection, something like that. And I say that because over here on the schematic, right here, that's the width device that is drawn, and it's drawn, well, I guess it's not a capacitor. It looks like it's an inductive device that is variable. And that is one of the horizontal yokes, horizontal deflection coils. These are the controls that we have. Now, I was fooling around with the positioning, trying to get the picture to center up vertically. And ultimately what happened was that these positioning rings broke apart. You can see how these metal tabs hold the positioning rings in place, and there are little tabs that came around to the back of the deflection yoke, and the plastic just disintegrated. So this was what was left of that. Mechanically, this has become unserviceable. And I do have this new old stock Sencore yoke, and I don't know how involved I'm going to get into dressing the wires nicely. It looks like it's kind of a project to get all this stuff worked in, but I'm going to go for it because, we may learn something in the process too. So this width control is pretty much stuck in there now. Oh, there we go. And these positioning tabs have been busted off. So that's what we're going to do. Now, this picture tube tests like it's brand new. So that's kind of one of the reasons why this set's even worth trying to pursue. That's the chassis number, a 16H28Q, 1962, as we talked about before. But the socket here was loose. Probably the adhesive is broken free, and the socket is just held in place by the wires that come through the CRT. So we have to be very careful. I expect that I can't get this yoke off without taking the tape off. Yeah, let's do this. Let's take off this deflection yoke, and we'll see what happens after that. So to get it off, I guess there's I'll go back to this statement about the beast. This thing must weigh 65 or 70 pounds. It is just immense, and the center of gravity on this, let me show you this, where all the weight is, it's way up in the front here. So this is the balance point, really. It literally, all of the weight is in the front. But what happens when you move this chassis around is this whole thing flexes because of all this weight on the out on the front of it. So when you try to pick it up, the chassis, even though it looks pretty stout, it's all stamped sheet metal, it really flexes. And what also flexes is this sort of the relationship between the deflection yoke and the picture tube. So the deflection yoke isn't coupled to or adhered to the picture tube like it is in I would say more modern, but that's kind of a ridiculous expression. It all comes off here. So the high voltage box supports the deflection yoke, and these magnets keep the position of the horizontal sweep, I guess, in place. I guess they're bendable and they're magnets. And this thumb screw, this wing nut, is has the ability to allow for the yoke to rotate and therefore leveling the picture. So I think we start with this. Pull these out. These they look like 1/4-inch hex screws, bolts. We'll see, and we'll pull off the. I'll start by carefully taking this off. I'm going to securely hold the socket on the CRT picture tube and pull the socket out. That's still in good shape. So this width sleeve appears to be made out of brass, and yeah, you can just see the deflection yoke just falling apart. This set is, I mean, I love ZENITH TVs, but this set is so far gone. You can see the busted tab there. This set is so far gone in terms of certain things. Electrically, I was going through some more resistors yesterday, spot checking, and there's so many that I continue to find that are over 20% out of spec, and at a point, I mean, it's really difficult to change a large quantity of parts with these ZENITH chassis with the solder cones that they have all these components soldered into. I've been just making a mess of the chassis every time I unsolder one and pull the lead out and measure it. Oh, there we go. So this is like made out of some sort of spring wire. It's, I suppose it's designed to hold it in place. So that's the width control, which I don't fully understand how it works. You can see the corrosion inside. I mean, maybe this, electrically, maybe this deflection yoke really is part of the problem too, but everything's covered with this corrosion. And assuming it all came from the environment it was in. Okay. So I'm going to pull off these they're 1/4 inch hex screws, sheet metal screws. There's 2 on either side, and they're slotted to allow positionability. Let's see if we can put some pressure, outward pressure on the screw, see if it can bite into the good part. Up, 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 up. Yep, there we go. Sorry, you can't see that. Same thing. I can get this one out. Do a little screwdriver pressure on it. Had to grab into the threaded part of the screw. One side has short screws because it's close to the high voltage rectifier tube, arcing and stuff. All right, so this whole assembly should be loose. Yep. You can see the picture too, how jiggly it is. So I have to assume that this is intended to be kind of a structural element too. And I have to flip this forward to get at these the wires underneath. So, and it's really difficult to tip this forward because there are control pots that stick out the front. So you can't just tip it forward because you'd end up with the, I think that's the horizontal hold control. It'll just bust it right off, create another problem. Yeah, so this is just the, keeps the, locks it down. All right, so let me get underneath, figure out something so I can disconnect the wires from the yoke, vertical and horizontal. The horizontal, let's see, let's look at this. Inside of this deflection yoke, I am assuming that this thermistor is inside of the deflection yoke. It has a number on it, R101, but I didn't see any reference to it in the SAMs as to where it might be. So the yellow, orange, black, and then there's a white wire that comes out, goes to the vertical size control. Maybe there is something to this. All right, let's get at it. All right, so we've successfully balanced this precariously, and we're looking for the two, well, all the deflection yoke wires, we're just going to separate it from the chassis. The, let's see, this is one of them, and the other one is right here. We have a red wire and a blue wire, just like in the movies. Which wire to cut first? Do we cut the red one? No, we cut the blue one. Cut the blue wire. We've disarmed the bomb. Okay. It's safe now. So here's what we're gonna do. We're going to take these flush cutters and we're going to cut the white wire. All right, and then we're gonna go here, cut the yellow wire. And then we're gonna cut the orange wire. Yep. I can't change my mind now. So we got the yellow one and the orange one cut, and the white one cut. All right, so there's one more. The black wire. Cut the black wire. That also goes back to this tie point here. So actually, it'll be pretty easy to get this deflection yoke out. But there we go. That's another view of the underside. From these points, these wires go up and go to the flyback. All right, so let's get on top. We're going to take this whole assembly off. I don't know, you can just see how these two things are. Without the support, there isn't much holding this all together comfortably, mechanically. I think I have to probably pull this tape off of this, see, the picture tube throat. Pull these magnets off. I see the screw. Oh, it's not a 1/4 inch. What is it then? Yeah, I have other tools, but this happened to be right here. I even have the proper tools. Okay. Now, can we get this off? Yeah. Not sure what this was. I just noticed this. It just sort of dropped down somewhere in here. Maybe I should have taken a picture. It's like a spacer. I'll worry about it in a bit. Okay, so what do we see here? Okay. The bracket that holds it in place is here. Bullet corrosion. But clearly this is intended to be a structural member. Keep the whole unit together. I bet it's pretty fragile. Yeah. All right, can we get the deflection yoke off without taking the tape off? Oh, I really hate to take this tape off. I'm gonna have to glue this socket on. Must be very careful. There we go. That's it. Good thing we cut the blue wire first. Here it is. I mean, we'll see when we hook up the other one, but this is just falling to pieces. It's just disintegrating, but I think that's just the plastic that surrounds it, and that would secure the tabs in place. But I think electrically I wouldn't expect it to be bad. So we'll see. Well, you can see in here how clean all this stuff is. Nothing is annealed, doesn't have that discoloration from age, or very little anyway. But I think this is a rebuild tube. There's a ridge right here. This would have been where they would have cut the original gun off of the neck and joined a new one, a replacement. So this is, looks like a rebuild, and that would explain why this is such an awesome test, perfectly, like good as new. This plastic donut that goes around the back of it is falling apart. It's the plastic's disintegrated. And let's see, I took the, this is the inner paper, I guess, core that was in here. It went in there like that. The ring assembly went like that. And these plastic parts and the little tabs kept this assembly together. This is the width sleeve that is used to adjust the size of the horizontal scan. So it goes inside, I guess the hole goes up, and then on the set the deflection yoke is like this, and the width of the picture is adjusted by running this in and out. Built, how they're wound, these deflection yokes. It's pretty clear that this thermistor is bundled into the yoke. There's a resistor across either coil. These are the vertical coils. There's a 1K resistor inside also, comes down from the orange lead, and then it also shows a 68 picofarad capacitor across one of the horizontal windings. It has DC resistance measurements that you should see across the wires. So the horizontal will show 22 ohms, and I guess that would be between the yellow and the black, and the vertical will show 40 ohms across the red and the blue. And that's pretty much what we get with both of them. Now, regarding the ring tester, Sencore suggests that in order to properly ring test something, you have to separate it out, the two vertical coils, and I think you're supposed to somehow remove the resistor so you can just test the coil as a pure inductance reading. But that simply isn't practical. The two coils for the vertical deflection are tied together, and the resistors are buried deep inside. So when you try to ring test, well, let's go down and try this. When you go down and try to ring test the vertical circuit, where's our red wire here? Okay, here's the red wire, and here's the blue wire. Oh, this is the vertical side. We should see if it's good. We should see, by hitting one of these buttons, we should see a deflection into the green. These are just represent different capacitances. So what we're supposed to see is one or more of these different capacitances going into the green, if it's good. But because of those resistors in there, you can't do it. A ring tester just doesn't do it. I'm not sure what the functionality of a ring tester would be. So this is the vertical leads, red and blue. Cut the blue wire first, red and blue, to the new yoke, and you would think that if something was wrong with the other one, we would see this to show good, but it really behaves exactly the same way. So by having those two coils, those two windings tied internally with those resistors across it, it completely kills any ability to ring test the vertical. So let's go to the horizontal. So between the yellow lead and the black lead, that represents the stretch between the horizontal windings. Okay, so what we should have here, we're going across the horizontal windings of this new yoke, new old yoke, and this is what it should look like when you have a good yoke. So we have more than one that test in the good, and then the others test differently. But these three capacitances, and like I said, Sencore says all you need is one of them to get into the good in order to demonstrate that the ring tester is showing that the coils are good. So the horizontal deflection coils are fine. And we'll test the old yoke to show you that too. So between the yellow and the black, we have totally similar response. So the horizontal windings are fine on the old yoke, and the vertical windings, using the ring tester anyway, demonstrate that you can't test it that way. You would need to get in here and desolder these resistors. Okay, this is the new yoke, new old yoke installed, and so I wiped all the tarnish away, and this is how this width sleeve is supposed to be adjusted. Slide it in and out to adjust the width. I threw the tape back on. So I just figured that if we get it fired up and everything works, and this does something, I'll just peel the tape off and glue it on appropriately. This wing nut allows the yoke to rotate to level the picture, and all the other leads poking through the holes, and got to get underneath to get access to things. So we'll do that next. I'm gonna have to flip this beast over on its side again, and I tightened up the screws. So yes, this is obviously intended to be one structural unit. This just seems a little dicey, but maybe not. So what I did when I recapped this ways back, I really took the low grade way out of this. This bundle of wires went to one of the terminals on this capacitor right there, and I cheated. I just snipped the tab off and soldered this. I recapped. This is the power supply, so that would be the bias voltage 265, between 245 and 265 comes out. By the way, it's not on right now. So this is the bias voltage goes up here, and this is one of the main filter caps. So the main filter cap on this circuit is now actually down here, and this is the 60 microfarads in the vertical circuit that was replaced again. So I'm going to clean this up, try to desolder it from here without destroying this these tabs, and if it doesn't look good, we're gonna snip. So, but what I was going to do is replace this resistor. We'll see if it's out of value, but even once I snip it, I might as well replace it. I was going to put it down here on these two unused lugs, and then bring some of these wires down. There seems to be enough slack. I can probably fit it down here and feed bias voltage into the resistor, across the resistor, and then back up here. So we're going to rework this, clean it up, and take a look, and then I'll check this one. I'll have to get this out of circuit too and check it, see how far off this is. If we look at it right now, where's the thingy? Right here. So that should be 5.6K. It is 4.7, so it's changed considerably. That resistor does get blazingly hot, so maybe the drop in value of this resistor is causing this to consume more current. So we'll see. We're going to check this circuit and see if we can get it to work better. 15,000 ohm resistor that came out of the contrast circuit. 1.5 plus 3 zeros, and the silver band represents its 10% tolerance. So 10%, within the 10% tolerance range of a 15K, it cannot go any higher than 16,500, or it's out of its 10% range, going up in value. And it happens to read 17,400, so it's above its 10% tolerance range. So we're definitely going to replace that. All right, so on closer inspection to really see the ugliness of this work, this is the main filter cap for the bias supply. Comes out 265, 255. For the contrast control, it goes through the resistor, and there's a capacitor underneath a 50 picofarad cap down here. And then that takes us up to where it tied before, which is one side of this contrast control. And on the inboard side of the resistor, this bias comes around and goes up to this cluster of wires, which goes to the main filter choke, and it goes to this lead, which takes us to the AGC bias, and then down here into this cluster, it's a point for a bias supply in the IF strip, which at this point has been bypassed. No sparks yet. We are feeding this from an over-the-air tuner box. And we should see our vertical light start up. Sound and vertical. There we go. And followed by picture. But it looks pretty good to me. I'd say that looks pretty darn good, actually. Maybe that did make a difference. Flames? Smoke? Nope.
Notre Dame Club of Ireland gathers there at Kennedy's Pub, and if you're a fan of the Irish, that's where you go. You watch your game.
Whoa.
The global impact of this Notre Dame brand, it stretches so far.
Okay, so I'm just going to pull the contrast knob out, activating dynamic contrast. And I don't know what it does.
$159 million American dollars just from this week.
I'm going to push it in and deactivate dynamic contrast. Same thing. Going back to this contrast circuit here, by pulling out the contrast knob, this is the switch that goes from normal to dynamic contrast. There's a bypass capacitor that falls into place. Now, when I look at the image now that that aspect of it anyway is working. Oh, by the way, this 180K was way off too in the brightness circuit. So the brightness and contrast circuits were just trashed. And this, getting back to this dynamic position, I just can't even see what difference it makes. We'll look at that a little bit later, but it's there anyway. So this in the contrast circuit here, there is this 5.6K 4-watt resistor, and that was completely open also. All right, just a follow-up note. This was that 5.6K 4-watt power resistor in the contrast circuit that is totally open, and I had replaced it with this. This is a similar value, 5.6K 5-watt resistor, and it got so hot that it started to discolor, and I didn't want to leave it in there. So what I did, plan B, was that I took two 3K resistors, put them in series. So there's two 5-watt 3K resistors in series, giving the circuit roughly 6K of resistance, where it should be. And this seems to work just fine. They get pretty hot still, but not as hot as this to turn it colors and then open up later on when you don't want it to. So that's my follow-up on this. I have no reason to believe that the circuit isn't functioning properly. And obviously the original one got so hot that it just went open. So that's what I did there. Everything seems to run cooler. And then this particular resistor we saw earlier, this was replaced and relocated down here as opposed to being in this cluster of poorly done recapping. And so this is all cleaned up now from my hack job earlier. This part of the schematic are those two coils. These two coils. These are the clips that hold them in. But right there, that's them. And you can see the IF comes right in from the tuner, goes into the coil. The switch is right there, the adjacent lockout, and then it goes into the IF strip coming out of one of those coils. It just seemed like I had given up too early on the IF strip. I got frustrated in this whole process, and it seemed to me like the problem was down here. This is the input side of the IF strip. The IF from the tuner comes in. I just tacked on some leads onto these two transformer coils, and just kind of felt guilty that I gave up too early on the IF strip. And this stuff, these two coils, as I mentioned, the IF comes in here. This is the adjacent channel lockout switch, so back in the day you could lock out, say, well, at any channel that was next to the channel you were at to improve the reception and the clarity of the picture. But it seemed to me like if this is the first video IF amp, and going up to the third, it seemed like the signal was either getting shorted or it was open. Something was open right at the beginning. So this stuff was just packed in here. I don't know how ZENITH, how they built this at the time, but those coils were jammed in there, and the shield is soldered into place, and the leads were tiny. They're fairly short, and it's obvious why they did that, because it would keep as much of the interference out, a better picture. But it made it nearly impossible to get probes in there and to see if anything is open or shorted. So I tried to unsolder things and take out the coils, but I kind of mangled it up. And then I just sort of put it on pause for a while. So we're back at it. And I tacked on some leads and turned it on, and it worked. So whatever I did, I don't know. When I had this assembly out, I couldn't find anything wrong with it. All the coils had continuity. Nothing seemed shorted, but I disturbed something, and when I tacked it all back together, it seemed to work fine. And in fact, it produces a really great picture. One of the complaints I had of running the signal into the grid of the video amp was that the picture, it was a very sharp picture that it produced, but it was smeary, had this horizontal smear to it. And it struck me as possibly just being the video signal that's overloading the video amp. But when you have the IF strip in place, you know, the AGC circuit regulates the drive back here at the very beginning stages of the IF. So like this 10K resistor is feedback from the AGC, which is up here. And once all this is in place and working properly, the horizontal smearing went away. It really produced a great picture. So let me get this fired up, and I'll just show you what we've got to start with. And there's a couple of things that I I'm a little concerned about, but we're making slow progress on this. I'm not sure how I'm going to get this back in place. I guess I've got to shorten the leads again and get it in there. IS strip is back in place. We're going to give it a try before we clean up some of these wires. Turn it on. Power. Starting up. Starting up.
Sunday at 10:30.
Television. Yes, television. It works, it works, it works. We didn't screw this up. Let's just double check if we jiggle this.
Dining with the chef.
This pin, it's this pin socket, pin 2 on this socket is the problem. All right. We'll see if we can clean that pin up.
I'm your host,
It's
Yu Hayami.
pin 2
Today I'm
in there.
visiting Kanazawa in Ishikawa Prefecture.
All right, well, we have a picture.
I'm standing
It's super bright in here,
historical site.
but it works.
This is the
So
old
we're gonna see if we
samurai
can
district
clean up
where
that.
samurai and their families
We're gonna
used
see if
to
we can
live.
clean this up. Ooh, don't stick your finger in there, it's running. We're gonna see if we can clean
This
that
area
up.
is one of Kanazawa's
That,
many historical
Pin number
districts.
2 on the socket.
It's a city
and,
where you
I'm
can
gonna
still
do some
experience
wire
the
snippage.
atmosphere and lifestyle of old Japan. This sets it apart from Tokyo.
Everything seems to be
making it
good.
a
All right.
popular destination
Yay!
for overseas.
Well, the IF strip is back together. This is the shield. I put the shield on, tucked in the wires, and everything is working pretty well. I don't know what I did. Like I said, I don't know what I did. I disrupted something by taking it all apart, and when I put it back together, it worked fine. So there we go. And then one last thing that I did do. I think this might be obvious, these two things. This is the high voltage rectifier, and then this is the plastic that surrounds the plate cap for it. It had, when I got this set, it was already broken in half, and there was a bunch of wax that had dripped and stuck it around things. And this particular high voltage rectifier is an RCA. I don't see a date code on it, but it's a 1K3 or a 1J3. I guess they're interchangeable. But this is all the information we have on it. But I happen to have a new old stock 1B3 and 1G3, and I put that in. They are interchangeable. And I cleaned up the high voltage cage. I didn't try to glue that plastic cap back on here. The metal contacts seem to be fine. I didn't see any arcing, but that's what it is right now. There's the flyback. The flyback was leaking some wax, but not so bad. And you might remember that earlier on. So let's fire it up. I think it solved a problem that I had been having. The problem I had been having with the high voltage, it was very sensitive to changes in the brightness control. So everything's working pretty well. And I think this might have solved the problem with the brightness. In the before I change this high voltage rectifier, let me turn this down. Before I had changed the high voltage rectifier, changing the brightness like this would have had a dramatic effect on the size of the picture. And the more it ran, the longer it ran, the bigger the problem. So what I did is I changed out the high voltage rectifier, put in a 1G3 instead. But I also cleaned up the brightness pot. It was pretty rough. And changing out the high voltage rectifier, I'm not going to get too close to it while it's running, it really seemed to make a big difference. So the real test will be later on tonight. I'll let it run for a while. It's football night, and we'll see how it works over time. You know, I do want to say that there aren't that many original components left inside this chassis. There were so many things wrong with this. And as I went along, I just started to notice these incremental improvements. And it isn't as if I had an emotional attachment to this chassis, but it seemed like oftentimes when I would change a component, it would just get a little bit better. So the capacitors, all the coupling and decoupling caps have been changed. There's a few original resistors left, but there's a lot of changes. A few of those orange brown drop caps are left in there, but for the most part it's been recapped completely. Electrolytics and coupling and decoupling caps. A lot of resistors have been changed, but this TV, this 1962 Zenith, has a fantastic picture now. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. I don't think I've ever seen a black and white TV that looks as good as this. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it's pretty amazing. So it took a long time, months and months of doing this. And I have no doubt that this is going to keep going. This picture tube is a new old stock in its quality. And now that the brightness size change has been resolved, this is awesome. Awesome TV.
If you have any questions or need additional help with injecting, your nurse ambassador is there for you and trained to help. Just call 1-866-SKY-RIZZY.